We've got one last panel before we're done for day one, and that will be on the art of green living, interior design and lifestyle changes for healthier homes, offices, and public spaces. And the moderator will not be me, but it will be somebody who do a great job. Her name is Dila Okran, certified health coach, sustainable business strategist, creative entrepreneur. And the panelists are Jane Ford, founder of Chika & Co., William Evans-Halm, CEO of Spectra Global, Grace Krobo Edusei, who is the CEO of Lily Grace Interiors, and Ophelia Akiwumi, CEO of Art Decor. So they'll be taking us through the art of green living. We're setting up the presentation, the room, and then we shall be back.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. And welcome to the Ghana Green Build It Summit. For those who have been part of the summit from the beginning of today, thank you for sticking around. And for those who are just joining, welcome to this session. We're the last session, but definitely not the least. I have a dynamic and pretty powerful panel of interior design professionals that are going to be chatting about the art of green living. Hello, panelists. I have Jane Ford, the founder of Chika & Co.
Hello.
I have Krobo Edusei, CEO, Lily Grace Interiors. I have architect William Evans-Halm, CEO Spectra Global, and Ophelia Akiwumi, CEO Art Deco. I'll allow each of my panelists to give a brief intro of themselves, starting with Jane.
Perfect. Firstly, thank you all for having me. I'm super excited to be on the panel today. My name is Jane Ford Matthews, and I am the founder of Chika & Co. So we are a sustainable and ethical furnishings company based in Ghana, but we do export to Europe. I also do sustainable interior design for both commercial and residential clients.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jane. I will go over to Grace Krobo Edusei.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I'm Grace Krobo Edusei. I'm the founder and CEO of Lily Grace Interiors. It's a boutique interior design portfolio, which is specializes in outdoor and indoor design as regards to eco-friendly and sustainable solutions.
Thank you, Grace. Over to William, architect William.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is William Evans-Halm. I'm the principal architect and CEO of Spectra Global Limited. It's an architectural and interior design and build firm. We are very passionate about sustainable architecture and interior design.
Awesome. And Ophelia Akiwumi, please go ahead.
My name is Ophelia Akiwumi, and I'm the CEO of Art Deco, which has been in existence for about 30 years. I've always been into using sustainable materials for both furniture and now in building accommodation for people.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for your intros. I know we have two presentations before we get into our topic here. And so let's see, who do we have started? Grace, we'll probably have your presentation come up. Do you have an intro to that presentation that you want to share with us? Or
all right, thank you. Yes, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to breeze through this presentation very quickly. And so basically we're talking about the art of green living and from an interior designer's point of view, from interior designer's perspective. So, so yes, right now, everyone is talking about sustainability. Everyone is worried about, global warming and all that. So there's a lot of information out there, and it is the responsibility, because at least I take it very seriously, of the interior designer to create that awareness, because we deal with the clients very closely to help those clients make the right choices about about the products that they're using, about the materials and all that. So I'm just diving very quickly. So basically, some of the elements, the main elements we're talking about is materials, finishes, lighting, indoor air quality. Any interior designer, what's his or her should be looking at indoor air quality. Normally, we just look at all the aesthetics and things like that. But the way the world is now, we all need to play our part in sustainability and making people safe and our environment safe. So it's our responsibility. And I'm sure there are lots of clients out there who also want to play their part. So I feel it's my responsibility to create that awareness and to help them make those choices. So I will just touch very quickly natural materials like bamboo and stuff like that. They're versatile, they're strong, flexible. I'm sure we're going to be talking about later. It's fast growing, and we're talking about the cost as well. So it can be used for everything, literally. We know bamboo in traditional sense for what it's used for, but it's now the application is in so many places in the home and the office spaces as well. So they're also looking at textiles. When it comes to materials, we're talking about textiles. There's so much textile around us, the curtains, the blinds, the beddings, and stuff like that. As an interior designer, you want to help your clients help make those choices and look out for certain certifications when they're buying. And even when an interior designer is sourcing materials, especially textiles, you're looking for those certifications. You're looking for products that have less or very, very low chemicals, so that you don't want to contribute to the ozone layer. You don't want to be adding more damage to the environment. So these are some of the certifications you want to be looking at, and especially textiles. You want to be looking at textiles that have been tested for harmful substances, which are made environmentally friendly facilities, and they're safe and socially responsible. So that's what it's all about. And there's some chemicals that, like lead, for example, you'd be surprised that there's still a lot of lead floating around in the system. There's formaldehyde, which is a chemical, which is a volatile organic compound, which is actually used traditionally in paints to give it that antibacterial, quality. Using paints, is using, disinfectants, a whole lot of stuff around the home and offices as well. So you want to be looking out for that. If one can get it very, very low or 0%, not easy, but one can get products that are very low in that. So when choosing, fabrics, for example, you want to be looking at, are they sustainable? Are they renewable? Are they biodegradable, or would they decompose harmlessly? So those are those decisions you want to be, looking at those areas as well. And anybody who has a conscience wants to play their part in looking at those, making those choices. And of course, everything else, that costs will come into it. And of course, we're going to talk about later, are they more expensive or is it cheaper to buy those things, to make those choices? What's it going to cost to your pocket? And again, looking at finishes very important, extremely for interior designer, paints, lacquer, varnishes, or traditional aspects of finishes, for whether it's for your walls, your furniture. These three items are extremely important. They're not going anywhere. So again, the question for paint is sustainability. What roles do they play environmentally? And again, what's cost to your pockets, when you're making those decisions. So I talked about volatile organic compounds earlier, and these are some of the things that causes. We take it lightly, but again, irritation. So that smell when you paint your home, when you paint your office, when you paint, generally that smell mostly comes from the VOCs, and it can cause headache, and sustained exposure over time can cause organ damage, skin reactions, fatigue. So sometimes we don't know why we feel ill, but it's usually because of what we have in our environment, and a lot of it is traced back to VOCs. So lighting is so important. Again, whether it's daylight, artificial lighting, we know that daylight is really better. These days with all the built up environment, we don't have space where a lot of buildings are just being built without regard for, enough lighting. So using artificial lighting, and really not the best way to go. But I'll tell you, daylighting is extremely important. It's an indicator of daytime. It's a signal for seasons and times and seasons. So daylighting is really good for you. We know that vitamin D comes from sunlight, and if you're going to get as much as you can, even through your window, your home, it's good for your mood as well. So again, relying on artificial lighting is affecting us psychologically, making us not to be so productive, affecting us, insomnia. Lots of people have insomnia, and they're wondering why. And if they were to look at their lives, they'll see that it's usually the artificial lighting at work, especially. We're exposed to lighting for long periods of time. So advantage of daylight will be improve vitality, because serotonin, for example, where people are taking serotonin tablets when if they have bigger windows and and all that, and then of course we have decreased daytime sleepiness and less stress, and shorter hospital stays if we had to have more daylight exposure to daylight, and of course 30% reduction in poor sleep and mood disorders if we'll just get half the daylight we need. So again, you want to use functional lighting. You want to use lighting exactly where they're needed. And I work with lighting designers. When we're designing a home or a space, we're looking at how much lighting does this property really need, and that calculation is made. And you don't want to use too much or too little. You just want to use just what is enough. So smart lighting, using technology and using appropriate lighting where it is needed, exactly where it's needed. And of course, we want to, so as an interior designer, you're helping your client to make those choices. So big deal, indoor air quality is so important now. Any architect or interior designer, once installed, will be looking at indoor air quality when it comes to design. So extremely important to be improving it. And that's, how do you improve it? Basically, it's just by reducing indoor pollutants. And those pollutants come from all the products, materials, finishes that are around us. And so making those informed choices. So when you make up your mind to say, look, I'm designing this property, we need to make sure that the indoor air quality, not just the beauty of the furniture or the environment, so indoor air quality is extremely important and should be incorporated in design. So looking at most indoor air pollutants and their sources, mostly looking at biological, will be from bacteria and from bugs around the home, which emits poisonous gases. Of course, the carbon monoxide from your gas stoves. You can't see the gas, but it's poisonous. So you want to have a well-ventilated kitchen. And of course, formaldehyde, again, we talked about, which is the VOC, which is common in paint and wood. And of course, there's lead in the ozone. And of course, we have nitrogen dioxide, which comes mostly from poly-maintained appliances and especially water heaters. So, so this making sure choosing the right appliances is very important. And of course, residents should be looking at maintenance. Of course, we're looking at pesticides as well. So that's extremely important. So how do we improve air quality? We're talking about green. Lots of people think that green is all about putting plants around. Yes, it's an extremely important part of it, but it has to be done with purpose, knowing that I am putting these plants here to obtain this particular quality for the air in my bedroom, put in the right plants as well. So using keeping your rocks clean and all that. So yeah, these are the plants we use, peace lilies and things. So thank you very much. My time is up, so we're going to get quickly straight to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was info-packed. That had a lot of information in there that I'm sure most people are gasping at some of the things, because especially when it comes to health, right? Because people don't really make that correlation between the things we put in our house and how it affects us physically, mentally, emotionally. Talking about sunlight, air quality, all these things come together to make it a healthy home. And that's exactly what we're trying to achieve. Thank you so much, Grace. That was very insightful. Before we go any further, because I know, Jane, you have a presentation as well.
Yes.
I'm not. Okay. Just for anyone who's just joining us, we're talking about the art of green living, and we're talking in relation to the home, office, and public spaces. We're looking at how interior design has an effect on our health, the environment, and just our spaces around us, right? Now, what is green living? Let's go back a little bit and describe what green living is for our audience. Can we start with Architect William?
Well, thank you very much, Diela. I think it's very basic. Green living is basically a lifestyle that allows us to get our needs met, right, without destroying the environment. So it's basically a way of living such that you can get your needs met, you can live your life, you can go about your daily activities, i.e. go to work, be at home, play with your kids, relax with family, without damaging the environment. So it's actually sort of a win-win situation for both people and the environment. And there are so many ways to achieve that. I believe that it starts with a deliberate mindset, and we practice it, it becomes part of our lifestyle. So in a nutshell, for me, green living is a win-win situation between people and the environment.
Right. Thank you so much. Is there anything anyone else wanted to add to that? I'll leave it open.
I would just add that I think, because it encompasses so much, that we can often get so overwhelmed. And I think people don't know where to start. They're thinking, am I green because I, recycle? Am I green because I use clean products in my home? And I think there's not one answer to that question. It's not a binary, right? There's so many different versions of what sustainable or living green could mean to you and could mean to us as interior designers. So I think, that feeling of getting overwhelmed, maybe like my advice to that would maybe start with one thing and then, attack different things, once you've felt like you have that one thing nailed, nail recycling or nail reuse or nail clean products, or if you're an interior designer, like start with one small thing so you're not feeling so overwhelmed by being constantly green,
Right. I think that's a great point, because it is overwhelming when people hear green living or sustainability, especially. People are like, oh, this is a little above maybe for companies or for bigger entities, not for the individual. So that's a great point. Thank you, James. Ophelia, do you have anything to add to that?
Basically, I think it starts from the actual building before you actually live in a house. It's using the kind of materials that are sustainable, using that affect, have very little effect on the atmosphere. We're into building with concrete and steel. And, if you start building primarily with non-toxic materials, local materials, traditional materials, you then actually move one step further to living in a green environment without polluting, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And, that's before you come to the inside of the house. It's what goes on the outside that matters. If you're living in a concrete box, you're not going to contribute that much to, the environment, because what is used to produce the concrete, pollutes the air to no end. I think that's
Right.
basically where I come from anyway.
Right. Thank you so much. And we're going to come around to that as well again and talk about what people can do now in the houses that they're in or the offices that they're already in, because we have people who want to live green but are already in a space, and how they can make that space that already exists more green, right? And then also, as Ophelia said, it does start from the design, start straight from the beginning, and then the things inside the house add to that greening up of the space. Thank you very much. Grace, did you have anything to add?
Okay. I think living green is really a decision. And like Jane said, you don't want to get overwhelmed. But I think that once you make that decision, then, working with, doing your own research and working with your architect or your interior designer or your builders, for example, certainly you will be able to make those decisions. You just need to, say, I'm going to go green every little way that I can, anything I can do to make those choices. Where can I get the stuff that I need to use to make my own contribution for my health and for my environment? So that decision is the first step.
Great. Thank you so much. So we have Jane. I'm gonna get you to go ahead and put your presentation through. We'll get to, I have a question here on the financial part, but we'll get to that. I'll just let you go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. Fair. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm working with two screens, so I might turn my head to look at the camera and to look at my screen. I think Grace has touched on quite a few pieces, but I'll just run through quickly. So something I just wanted to touch on, a lovely quote from Our Common Future. I think my feeling is that we're shepherds here on earth. We have a duty to look after it, but we don't own it. So we have to make sure that whatever we design or whatever we construct or whatever we do on this earth, we are making sure we have a duty of care to it. I think the earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and we've only been here for about 5 million of those. So we haven't been here for that long, but we've managed to do a lot of damage. So I think from now on, let's be kind of more conscious and mindful that we are shepherds in this world. So I think we touched on a lot of throughout the day why we should kind of integrate sustainable practices. But from, I suppose, an interior design point of view, humans have always, sought elements to feel really safe, secure, and kind of emotionally balanced. And over the past year with COVID and the pandemic, we've really seen consumers feel like they want to return to nature, especially with the amount of time we spend at home. Everyone's kind of working from home. We spend over 90% of our time indoors. So we really need to make sure that us as interior designers or architects, we're building buildings to really maximize the calming effects of nature. We need to also start making choices to mitigate the effects of climate change and biodiversity loss. And then, we're talking about a climate point of view, but also from a financial point of view. I know there's a lot of kind of people in business and people in construction on this event. So let's just take the US kind of green building market as an example. That market has been estimated to be worth over 82 billion, and it's rapidly growing. So there's so much opportunity for us, especially here in Ghana, to really tap into that kind of growing, I suppose, idea of wanting to get back to nature. Even look at like sustainable products. Those types of products have been grown almost year on year, and by 30% over the last couple of years. So, people are really spending with their wallets and making decisions to buy more sustainable products, But what actually, I suppose, what makes sustainable design, or what makes interior design sustainable? So us as interior designers or architects, we have to balance an awful lot, and we balance a lot of different aspects. I think Grace touched on it there a second ago. We're building and we're designing, concrete boxes. We're not designing buildings for the climate that we're in Ghana. The types of houses that we're building in Ghana are the same as the houses that we're building in Ireland. In a freezing cold country, the houses should not look the same.
Okay.
The houses we should be building, architecture from a mix of, from materials that can kind of navigate the dry climate, humidity, and then heavy rainfall. So that's one of the kind of key things that we need to start balancing as architects and interior designers. These other kind of 8 aspects that are on the screen now are things that I generally tend to try and balance, and I'll go through them in a little bit more detail. So the first one is what we interior designers call biophilic design. So it's quite an exciting kind of system-based way of recognizing that all of our choices, purchases, activities, and decisions, they all have an impact on our health, our well-being, and also the environment and our planet. So it's a kind of a human-centric approach. It puts the kind of building occupants at the heart of its design without, negatively impacting the environment as we do so. So we take into consideration artificial light, air conditioning, synthetic kind of textiles, mass-produced products filling our homes. So it's really crucial that we start to really think about bringing, living products into the home. As Grace mentioned earlier, like bamboo flooring, rattan, wicker furnishings, stone, natural woods. All those things have benefits to not just our health, but engaging our senses, supporting our well-being, reducing stress levels. And even from, we're talking about even from a commercial point of view, these things have been shown to positively impact organizational, financial well-being, by increasing focus and productivity. So it's really, as we said earlier, win-win. In terms of sustainable material sourcing, which we're going to touch on a little bit later, but I just wanted to kind of get into the nitty-gritty a little bit. We can do a few things to be a little bit more sustainable. We can look locally source, and I love working with the Ghanaian artisans to really elevate spaces. But then we work with those artisans. Are those artisans then using sustainable materials? What are the materials that they're using? And some good examples of that would be stone, wood, coconut, bamboo, and even recycled plastic. So then once we get the sustainable materials, then what's the finishing? And again, we touched on that earlier, but a lot of these finishes that we use, like the glues and the paints, are not healthier for our homes. They're very toxic. And it was touched on earlier, the VOCs, the lead, the PVC, like all of those things can be found in paints, wallpapers, acoustic paneling, you know, waterproofing, all the fire retardant things like that. Like all of those are what are harmful to our health. So can we get paints, can we get wallpapers that have little to no VOCs? You know, can we use acoustic paneling that are maybe the fiber of coconuts? You know, those things are out there, and we can start really researching and looking into them as viable alternatives and cheaper alternatives if we can get them in Ghana. Another thing that was touched on earlier, so I won't go over it too much, but it's the air quality. And, you know, I live in Accra, it's heavily polluted, just like every other city is heavily polluted. So what can we do to kind of retrofit that? Can we use air purifiers, you know, or if we're building, can we use clever design, you know, to airflow across without obstruction? Can we insulate with hemp or even build with hemp or sustain it like healthier materials so that we're not needing to then, you know, come in afterwards and retrofit with air purifiers? Thinking about working with ventilation levels and, you know, even ultraviolet light. There's so many different ways that we can think about that. I've put plants in with a question mark because there's lots of research from NASA a few years ago to say that plants are great for air filtration, but then there's been some new research to say that actually you need about 10 to 1,000 plants per meter square to actually do any good. So, you know, but they do have other benefits. They boost our moods, they look beautiful, you know, there's lots of other, you know, great things that plants can do if they're not fully cleaning our air. Just want to touch on water saving. So a big thing for me and what I do if I'm working with architects is work out a way to kind of either use alternative water or collect and use the grey water. So this is a great illustration that kind of shows that maybe the water that we use from our showers, can we reuse that, you know, and flush our toilets, or can we reuse that for watering our plants, you know? How can we save water without, you know, compromising the environment? You know, other things that I'm looking at are things like water timers, sensors, systems that just use less water. Another kind of maybe cheaper version of this, if we're not looking at water reuse systems, or if we have a garden, instead of, you know, plants that need an awful lot of water, how about looking at, you know, things like fauna, cactus, even the little succulents? Like think about using different types of plants in your garden so we're not using as much water. Oh, sorry. There we go. I'm going to skip that one because we don't have much time, and I'm just going to go on to design purpose because I think this is really important. It's a big part of my ethos and methodology is the relationship between architecture, history, and cultural connections. I really believe that the inside should mirror the outside. And I think Ghanaian architecture can serve as an amazing inspiration to us. And I think that when we're talking about green and healthy homes, I really feel like our space should be a true reflection of who we are. And in Ghana, we have a wealth and abundance of cultural references. And I think that's kind of key to a healthy and also a green home, is be able to referencing that. I think there was a mention earlier as well as, you know, thinking about traditional methods. You know, I spent a lot of time going outside of Accra and, you know, visiting, you know, smaller towns where they would build with old clays and things like that. And I don't know if you've ever been inside of one of them, but they are super cool. They're not like these concrete boxes. They're very cool. They're very, you know, they're very easy structures to build, and they're very, you know, they're very environmentally friendly. So I think we really need to go back to then move forward. So thank you. Any more questions? I'll leave my details there, or you can ask me afterwards.
Thank you very much, Jane. That was great. And I love that you talked about stewardship of the planet. That's a huge one that I think will start to change, or hopefully will start to change the minds of people in the fact that it's not just that we're living here now, but we're thinking about future generations. We're supposed to leave them something that they can use. So if we're destroying our planet, that's not something that can happen. And it's definitely the things that we decide to use in our daily life contribute to whether we're making the planet healthy, our homes healthy, ourselves healthy, or vice versa. So thank you so much for that. Architect William and Ophelia, did you have anything to add to the portion of us being able to, I guess, green up our homes, offices, public spaces in regards to materials, lighting, finishes, and air quality?
Well, yes. I like the point that Jane made about in the beginning about not being overwhelmed. And one of the points she made reference to, for example, WCs. You know, essentially, because green or sustainable living has been added for quite a while, most essentially, we are already practicing it. We just need to ramp up our efforts. For example, some 10 years back, we used to use WCs that when you flush, you use about 11 liters of water, the traditional twist handle WCs, right? Now, in almost every home, you have these press button WCs, either low flush WCs or dual flush WCs. We do about 30% of the water that was being used previously. So already we must not feel overwhelmed because we are already doing that. We have moved from the use of incandescent bulbs, right, to energy saving bulbs, right? That is seriously dropping our power consumption. I remember the days when we used to have 60 watts, 80 watts, 100 watts. Today, for the same illumination, you are doing 15 watts, 12 watts, 6 watts, right? So already we are already transitioning as a people gradually towards green living. The problem is whether we are doing it fast enough in relation to the degrading of the environment, right? So I think that there are so many ways we can incorporate this green living into our spaces. Example, for me as an architect, the first thing I'd want to say is, I mean, obviously when you're designing a building, the first thing you want to look at is orientation. Whereas in the West, you design to embrace heat because of the cold weather. In our part of the world, we design to cut out excessive sunlight, hitting the building, excessive heat, and we allow natural ventilation. So I would say, for example, when insist on your designers to think about lighting, daylighting, insist on your designers to think about natural ventilation. It's amazing how everyone has switched to sliding fixed glazed windows, run away from louvered windows, but they are beautiful louvered windows. Louvered windows are beautiful. They allow maximum ventilation. If you use a 3-bay sliding window, you get 30% efficiency of the window. If you did the same 3-bay in louvered window, you got 99% ventilation. So think about that. So it's about time we insist on our designers to be thinking about this. So I would say that we need to look at things like orientation. In our part of the world, the sun rises from the east and sets in the west. And so even in planning the spaces, you want to put non-sleeping spaces in such areas. You want to put your kitchens in the west because you actually want the sanitizing power of the sun in your kitchens and stuff like that. I also want to say that there was a little study that was done in a hospital about people in rooms that were exposed to the outdoor environment, and people in rooms because of design had no windows. And it was discovered that people in the rooms that were exposed to the outdoor environment recovered faster. There's absolutely a correlation between greenery and our well-being. And I want to challenge us to change the narrative from thinking about green only for the environment, but greening for us as the human beings on earth is much beneficial to us. It helps us, it will improve our well-being. Green spaces, I want to talk more about offices. Green spaces in an office environment essentially increases the bottom line profit for the CEO. So let me give an example. If you have an office space, you have enough daylighting, you've introduced greenery into the space, you've designed with biophilia, water features and stuff like that. Research has shown that this improves cognitive ability, right? Reduces stress, reduces the speed at which you get tired, and therefore improves productivity. When workers are more productive, they produce more. And what happens to our bottom line? So living green is not only for the benefit of the environment. I think it's about time we see that it is beneficial to us as human beings, us as a people, not only the environment. That's why in the beginning I said it's a win-win scenario. So simple things. Grace has talked about low VC paints, and I just want to give example. For example, if you're using water-based paints, and it's available on the market, use water-based paints. They have less volatile organic compounds than oil-based paints, right? So they are simple, non-expensive methodology to live green. We talked about people living in concrete boxes. The reality on the ground is that, look, tropical houses require more space. You have to have either a T plan, an H plan, an I plan, have linear plans to maximize ventilation. And because of cost, we are doing compact houses, right? But we can introduce skylighting, which brings in daylighting into the space. So if you can introduce daylighting from the side in a room where, let's say, other rooms are around it, you can do that from the rooftop. It's about time we begin to think about courtyards. Back in the 60s, a lot of houses had courtyards that allowed you to bring daylight into the house. And I think it's about time that we insist on some of these design features from our architects, from our interior designers. And these are little things that we can do in our homes, in our offices, and they're actually proven facts that they improve our well-being, they improve productivity, and it actually gives a better quality of life.
Thank you, Architect William. I wanted, Ophelia, can you please touch on the cost involved in going green or living green, or in regards to interior design? Because I see quite a few questions here on cost. It's one thing to talk about all these solutions, but can people afford living green?
Is it me? Well, the thing is, I think basically it's a mindset of the people of this country. Not only the people, but also the architects. We seem to be stuck in a narrow channel of not trying to think outside the box and convincing clients to go, to do things in a particular way. Generally, a client will come to you and say, right, I want this and I want that because I've seen it here. But whether it is convenient or to your way of living is another issue. And you have the complaints, the architect says, oh, well, they don't really want it. If we give them the design, they go to somebody on the wayside to do it, or the person comes to you and say, well, Kweku Mensah has built this house and I want the same thing. But Kweku Mensah's lifestyle is not necessarily your lifestyle. And it's for the architect to say to them, listen, I can give you an alternative and, build in a way that suits the climate. But they never, they always tell you, well, the client doesn't want. But you are the architect, you are the designer. It's for you to change that mindset. And until we get that from that level, all this, talking about going green and doing this is not going to really get us anywhere, because concrete bunkers are going up daily. And everybody, we come from a culture where we don't live on top of each other. Traditionally, we have the house, we have the compound, we have everything outdoors. Now, we've gone, everything is indoor. Whatever was there before, which worked, we've been busy tearing it down and putting in all these things that come from cold climates, which really does not suit our lifestyle. We are blessed with the sun, we are blessed with, a good environment, and all we have to do is to look at what we have and then use it, and not look at what is, outside and bring it inside And that means you are, you have arrived or whatever, and it's just basically a mindset. I was inspired to build with raffia. Now, I saw this, I passed by a residence, a hotel, and I thought, oh, what a beautiful thing. Somebody has actually built with timber. My first impression was that it was timber. And, after I took went back and had a look, and it wasn't timber, it was raffia. And I was like, wow, somebody actually thought out of the box and built this fantastic hotel. So, it was cheap, it was beautiful, and everything was local. So why can't we go that way? And I decided to do an experiment of it. And it really, worked so well. And this is where, everybody thought, oh, it's not safe. The first thing people say to you, is it going to burn? I say, everything burns. It depends on how the wiring and everything. If it's done properly, it can last forever. Look at the Far East. Look at Europe. Buildings are not built with, all the buildings are not built with concrete and blocks. Buildings have been standing for generations, built with timber. Scandinavian countries, in the States, in England, everywhere in the world, except here where we have the raw materials, and we all so worried about, it's going to burn or the thieves are going to come in. You can't lead your life with that kind of attitude. And really, basically depends on the architects of this country to try and, move that out of this box-like thinking that we have. You find these beautiful old houses, and next thing you see, as you said, they've removed all the louver windows and put in these sliding windows, in which they end up with very little ventilation. But it's fashionable, as they say in quote. So it's a mindset that has to be constantly, talked about and changed, and not just one conference and then that is that. It's just something that has to be put in practice for people to see and educate people constantly before you can actually do anything else.
Right. Thank you so much. You touched on mindset, which was one of the things that someone had mentioned. I think it was Kojo and Info had mentioned in there, that the elephant in the room is societal attitudes towards these things, right? So it does start from creating an awareness that there is value to switching to a green lifestyle, not just because it's a trend or something that's happening right now that everyone is doing, but because it does have long-term positive effects on ourselves, our health, the environment, and long-term our finances, whether it be your own space, an office, or public spaces, for sure. So thank you for touching on the aspect of the mindset switch. It's definitely needed for sure.
Can I touch on that before we move on, Julia? I've had a similar kind of experience. We've been trying to build our home in Ghana, and we're trying to build it as sustainably as possible. And we're having a lot of trouble with the architect and getting him on board with the idea. And that's been a real struggle, because I've been wanting to use things like bamboo as a frame, which has been done in Ghana. I know schools that have been built with bamboo as a frame. And he's constantly pushing, steel or, concrete and things like that. And it's been a real struggle for me personally, just to be able to work with the architect on those things. So yeah, I would second, and I would love to see your home made from raffia. That sounds amazing. Can I just also answer the question about the living green and how, I suppose, is it affordable, right? Because that's always, the question. Do you have to sacrifice luxury to live sustainably, or is it just for rich people, or people with lots of money? How attainable is it really? And I would say that in some ways it isn't as attainable right now, but in lots of ways it is. So one of the biggest things that I want anyone who isn't an interior designer or a builder to take from this conversation is you can source the most beautiful things locally. And another thing with the mindset with Ghanaians that I found is, everyone wants things that have come from abroad. They don't want something made by a local artisan. I find most of the time, this isn't everyone, but most of the time, they want something that's been imported from the US or China. And I'm like pulling my hair out because these things are beautiful and I'm exporting them out of the country, I think there's so much value in what is here and what people are making here in the products that you have here. And they're usually way cheaper than anything that's imported. So if you're looking to really kit out and furnish your home, there's so much cheaper option just by going locally than by importing all of your things or by buying imported goods. So I think it is attainable in that sense. And I think there's a lot of ways that maybe it isn't as attainable for people to live like that. Another thing I just want to touch on before we move on is this whole idea of a healthy home and the products that we use within our home. So we've built our home, we furnished our home, and now we're living in our home. What things are we using to clean our home? And that's a really cheap way of getting a healthy home. Throw out all of the bleaches and all of the toxic chemicals and just go back to the old ways of using white vinegar, baking soda, liquid soap. They're the things that are healthy and all the things that you need. And it's a cheaper alternative and cheaper way of living in a clean, healthy home, instead of buying all of these expensive things, use the cheaper, healthier things for your home.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane. Just for the sake of time, I know there are more questions and people are really excited about this topic and have so much that they want to find out, but we do have to wrap up. I'm just gonna get everyone to kindly start in with Grace. We'll go Grace, Architect William, Ophelia, and then Jane. What is one thing that our listeners can take with them as they leave this conversation that they can apply to their life, just starting from now? That isn't, like you said, Jane, that won't bring that overwhelm, right? So one thing that you think they can do to start living a green life. Over to you, Grace.
Yeah, thank you. It's been amazing. I would like to speak that I know we have different kinds of people watching us right now and listening. I'd like to talk to regulators, like I said, governments, and because they make a lot of decisions. We'll talk about regulations concerning building permits, what they allow into the country. And so I want to speak to them that they should do the right thing to protect us, to protect the environment, to protect our country. And I'm also talking to individuals. I want people out there to do the research, have an open mind, speaking to fellow professionals. I want you to sell the idea of living green to your clients. They will take it. You got to just make them understand it, and once they understand it, because when we talk about sustainability, it's not just things around us. What are we, our children, our grandchildren, our generations to come going to be alive? Are we going to make ourselves extinct? So we need to be around, for our offspring to inherit the earth. And if we don't have anything to give them, then what's the point of sustainability? So governments, individuals, regulators, I'm talking to you. Let's do green living. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. William?
Thank you very much, Diela. I just want to talk about one word: motivation. People get motivated or charged up to do something when they are really motivated, when they have a reason to. And what I want to say is that living green is not only about the environment. It actually benefits you, the individual, more. Many times in economies where people always say, oh, look, hey, people have money in the West, they are thinking about green. Look, when we have money, we'll think about that. But living green is not about only the environment. it's about your health. So what I want to say to people is that understand that living green is about improving your health and your well-being, and therefore be motivated to live green too. It's not expensive to start living green, right? So I want to give some comparisons. Louvered window against sliding window. Rainwater harvesting to wash your cars and have it and to water your lawns against use paid water. Bamboo furniture against imported steel furniture, right? Natural ventilation against paying for AC every time. Living green does not have to be expensive, all right? So these are the two takeaways that I want our viewers or everyone who is watching or who is tuned in into this to take away. One, living green is also about you. It benefits you as well as the environment. It's not only about the environment. The focus is not only on the environment, the focus is on you, your well-being, your children. And then secondly, it does not have to be an expensive venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Architect William. Ophelia?
Well, our parents and foreparents lived in a green and sustainable way. And we, the later generations have come and changed it around. All you have to do is to look around Cape Coast, Accra, Jamestown and everything. These buildings were there. And, even in the colonial days, the buildings that were put up with the idea of ventilations. There were no air conditioners. Buildings were, all the buildings had high ceilings, jalousie windows, and there was constant flow of air. We have just, imported what happens in the West and brought it down here. And, it's not expensive. It's not rocket science. Just go back to your roots and, everything will work out.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Jane, any last words first?
Last words, I would say I second what everyone has already repeated, but and I want to just reiterate that I feel the quickest and easiest way without feeling overwhelmed is start by sourcing locally. Work with locals, work with local materials. They're in the environment for a reason. They're around us for a reason. The local materials are what will work with the environment. So instead of importing and using different materials that are not native to Ghana, I would say that's the first thing. And then if you're not an interior designer or a builder, if you're just looking to live in a greener home, start with looking at your cleaning products. I read Michelle Gundogan's book. She's an interior designer, and she states that homes are 90 times more polluted than the average street. So, and one of the reasons for that is all of the reasons we touched upon before, but because of the cleaning products and the toxins we bring into our home. So a super easy thing for the average person is just look at the cleaning products you're using and replace with the more natural, cheaper versions of that.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Architect William, Ophelia, and great. You have brought a wealth of knowledge to this conversation, and I'm sure people have a lot of takeaways to go away with. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the audience. Please go onto the Ghana Green Building Summit website, and you can find more information about the panelists. You can reach out. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer some of these questions that you have. But for now, I think it's a wrap. We're done. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And to the audience, I guess we're going into the networking session. So